And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather again showing low pressure here along the southwest coast, general low pressure over the eastern Bering Sea, as well as the western interior here, another weak center up off the Arctic coast. So areas of showers, light rain, still a possibility over a good portion of southern and southeast Alaska with snow at the higher elevations. Kind of a mixed precipitation pattern of a showery nature up here over the eastern interior and along the Brooks Range, as well as the north slope in the Arctic coast. And for the Panhandle, look for some shower activity to continue with that weak low off the south coast. That kind of weakens into a trough tomorrow. That's going to keep it mostly cloudy with a few showers around there, and rain or showers southern Alaska here. Again, snow at the higher elevations, and a trough here bringing some rain into the eastern interior, Tanana Valley up across the Yukon Flats, with rain and snow showers in the Brooks Range, north slope Arctic coast, chance of rain, and periods of light rain, fog and drizzle here for Bristol Bay and the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta down to Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday, next system comes into the western Bering Sea, bringing increasing wind and rain into the western Aleutians. And over the Gulf of Alaska, we've got this low right here develops and strengthens and moves northeastward. And that begins to increase the wind and rain, of course, over the Gulf, and probably Wednesday evening for the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle once again. For coastal water forecasts here for the central and south coast, south winds 15 knots and north to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots on the north coast. Lynn Canal, southeast 15 knots. Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, south winds at 15 knots. And then for Wednesday, small craft advisories here for the central and south coast. South winds 25 knots. Also small craft advisories for the north coast, east-southeast 25 to 30 knots. Lynn Canal, small craft advisories south of 25. And Wednesday, Stevens Passage looking at south winds 20 knots with higher gusts and southeast of 20 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet for the day Tuesday. Otherwise, the North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, light variable winds in the forecast. And southwest or variable to southwest at 10 knots for Cook Inlet with 2-foot seas. And on Wednesday, northeast 15 knots for Cook Inlet, east 15 Kamishak Bay, east winds 20 knots for the Barren Islands and Prince William Sound, seas at about 4 feet. And western North Gulf Coast, northeast at 20, small craft advisories for the Middleton Island areas here, east 25 to 30 knots. Kodiak Island, variable to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots for Tuesday. Western, or for the Alaska Peninsula, west winds 15 to 25 knots, southwest at 20 with 6-foot seas for Bristol Bay. And for Wednesday, Kodiak Island, northeast winds 15 knots, seas 3 to 4 feet. Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 20 knots with 3 to 6-foot seas, and Bristol Bay, northwest at 15. And for the eastern Aleutians, mostly northwest winds of 15 knots for the day on Tuesday there. Small craft advisories from Matka Island to about Kiska for northwesterlies at 25 knots, Kiska to Shimia northwest at 20. And for Wednesday, small craft advisories west of Adak all the way out to Shimia, west-southwest winds 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 8 feet. Westerlies here for the central Aleutians at 15 knots. And for the Fox Islands, northwest, 15 to 20 knot winds with 4 to 6-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, tomorrow, north winds 10 to 15 knots. St. Lawrence Island, north at 15, variable winds at 10 for St. Matthew Island, and north at 15 for the Pribilofs. For Wednesday, northwest 15 knot winds, likely here for St. Paul and St. George. St. Matthew Island, southwest at 15. Kuskokwim Delta Coast, northwest at 20, Yukon Delta Coast, west at 15. And for St. Lawrence Island, west at 10, and Norton Sound, southwest at 10 with 4-foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west-southwest, 10 to 15 knots. And the central and western coast, southwest winds, 10 to 15 knots. The Chukchi Sea looking at southerlies at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And for the day Wednesday, Chukchi Sea here, south at 10 to 15 knots, south 10 knot winds for the western Arctic coast, west 15 on the central coast, and westerlies 20 to 25 knots there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline.